Assalamualaikum and good day everybody. Today we will discuss foreign direct investment and collaborative ventures. So as we have learned the last few weeks, FDI and collaborative ventures are two of the final methods for firms to enter an international market. Just to refresh on what we have learned the last few weeks, to enter an international market, it depends on how much resource a firm is willing to commit, and also in return the firm will enjoy some degree of control. The most flexible method to enter an international market is exporting, as we have learned the last few weeks. But the firm will enjoy a minimal amount and degree of control. If they are willing to commit more resource through contracts, they are able to enjoy a bit more control than exporting. So contractual basis on to enter an international market, as you can all remember, licensing, franchising, and also other methods. Remember, turnkey, contracting, BOT, and others. The method to enter an international market whereby the firm can enjoy the highest amount of control but only if they are willing to commit a larger amount of resource is FDI and collaborative ventures. So FDI is foreign direct investment and collaborative ventures are partnerships. So you enter an international market through investing or making friends. So in this topic today, we will try to understand international investment and collaboration, describe the characteristics of foreign direct investment, explaining the motives for FDI and collaborative ventures, identify the types of foreign direct investment, understand international collaborative ventures and the experiences of retailers in foreign markets. Basically, in the topic of FDI and collaborative ventures, two items here, FDI and collaborative ventures, whereby we will talk about the characteristics, the pros and cons, and also the motives. Again, not all countries, not all companies are suitable in using FDI or collaborative venture to enter an international market. So, especially for your assignment, have a look into the country that you are focusing on and the company itself. Based on these two, you can decide which method that the company should take to enter this international market. A few concepts first. Foreign direct investment is a strategy whereby the firm establishes a physical presence abroad. This is a keyword. By acquiring productive assets. This is also keyword. Acquiring meaning purchase. Remember, it is an investment. But not low scale investment, it's high scale because the firm will buy capital, technology, labor, land, plant and equipment. So you can imagine the capital for this is quite high. This is different than international collaborative venture, meaning that this is a cross-border business alliance by which partnering firms pool their resources and share costs and risk of a venture. This is more about partnership. This is almost similar to joint venture, which is a form of collaboration between two or more firms to create a jointly owned enterprise. Let's take a look into some companies that have internationalized to Malaysia. Remember, in reality, foreign direct investment can be pursued with other methods of entry as well. Tesco in Malaysia, for example, they enter Malaysia through FDI and collaborative venture. They purchase or they acquire facilities left by a previous company called Makro, which is also a supermarket company. So they acquire the assets left by Makro, and at the same time, they are engaged in a collaborative venture with Sime Darby. So here, Tesco can enjoy the facilities through investment and enjoy supply chain edge, meaning because Sime Darby holds a lot of supply chain in Malaysia in terms of food, beverage, and a lot of other commodities as well. Enjoy both of them, and Tesco did survive in Malaysia for a few years. On the other hand, take a look into Sony. Sony entered Malaysia purely through FDI. What they did was, they built the facility. If they build the facility, they must purchase or acquire the land. This also involves a lot of capital. Okay, so you can build, you can purchase. Some companies, they enter Malaysia through collaborative venture. So these brands right here, they did a collaborative venture with this company called Berjaya. What about service multinationals? They have to, it is best for them to enter a foreign market through FDI, because for firms that offer services, firms offering lodging, construction and personal care, they must offer them when and where they are consumed. Can you export services? Maybe yes, but you cannot export services 100%. That is why FDI is the best choice. Service firms, that is why service firms establish either a permanent presence through FDI. Company that is focused on retailing, for example, they do FDI. Or a temporary relocation of a personnel, for instance in the construction industry. And many support services such as advertising, insurance, accounting and package delivery are best provided at the customer's location. Okay, remember DHL, FedEx, service multinational. One of the best examples for service multinational is hotel industry. Marriott, for example, they internationalized through FDI in Rwanda because they want to have presence in all of the regions in the world. Can you export Marriott? You cannot. That is why they chose FDI. Let's take a look into the leading destinations for FDI. Advanced economies in Europe, especially Britain, Germany, France, they are the top choice for FDI. And then you have Asian countries like Japan, even Singapore. North America is also a leading destination for FDI. These countries are popular FDI destinations, mainly as attractive markets. But remember, we have learned about emerging markets. Emerging markets and developing economies have gained appeal as FDI destinations. Remember the topic of emerging markets? Why are they getting more appealing? Okay. First, they act as a good market because the socio-economic status of the citizens are increasing. They are also good as a source of labor because the quality of education is also increasing, and quality and quantity of labor is quite high according to the price. It's inexpensive. At the same time, emerging markets has a lot of natural resources. So, firms target China, Mexico, and Eastern European countries to do low-cost manufacturing, and it is easier for them to easily access huge adjoining regional markets. If firms target Malaysia, they can target also Indonesia, Singapore, and Thailand. Let's take a look into the top destinations for FDI in the last 40-50 years. In 1979, the top country for FDI is the US. You have one Asian country here, which is Egypt. Following 10 years, China entered the list. Okay, Egypt is not in the list anymore, but US is still number 1. 10 years later, US is still number 1, and China moved into number 7. I think this is 8, number 8. Next 10 years, India entered the list and China moved towards number 2, with US is still number 1. Recently, this is 2019 and this is the recent statistics from the World Bank. US is still number 1, China is number 2. Note that there's also another emerging market here, Brazil and India. Okay, so that is something interesting to see. US is still number 1. Let's look into the factors relevant to selecting locations for FDI. As a manager of an international or multinational firm, these are the factors that you want to consider before selecting a location if your firm wishes to enter an international market through FDI. First is market factors. You want to make sure that the location is suitable in terms of the demand and if you can sell your products in that market. So, you want to take a look into the size of the national market and the growth of the national market. At the same time, you want to have a look into the size and growth of the regional market as well. Because if you are operating in a country, you want to be operating in the neighboring countries as well. At the same time, you want to have a look into the proximity to key export markets. For example, if a global firm wants to invest to Malaysia, they want to take a look into how near Malaysia is to Singapore or Indonesia or other neighboring countries. Second is human resource factors. Remember, if you want to operate in a foreign country and especially through FDI, you are required to hire locals. It would be very expensive if you want to bring people from your home country to the host country. So, a manager wants to have a look into the cost, availability, and productivity of skilled labor, the involvement of labor unions, and also the availability and quality of managerial workforce and also employment regulations. So, this is where the host country's education level comes into the picture. Next, the manager wants to have a look into infrastructural factors. Operating in a foreign country, you want to know if the infrastructure in that foreign country is sufficient in terms of railroads, the roads, and also electricity, drainage system, and so on. You do not want to waste your time operating in a foreign country if these aspects are not sufficient to support your operation. So, a foreign manager wants to have a look into the availability and quality of local manufacturing, efficiency of physical distribution, the cost, availability and quality of utilities and finance, the banking system and banking facilities, for example, and also the quality of marketing and distribution. And at our age right now, the quality of telecommunication, the internet quality should be taken into consideration as well under infrastructure. Next, once you are operating in that foreign country, you want to make sure that you can keep your profit and you are able to repatriate or move the profit and revenue to your home country, to the headquarters. So, a manager of a multinational company wants to have a look into the types and level of taxes in that foreign country, tax rates for profit repatriation, the complexity of the tax system, and also rate of inflation in that host country. For your assignment, especially this one, take a serious look into the rate of inflation of your selected host country. Next is the economic factors. Remember, FDI means you are investing. You are acquiring land, you are acquiring facilities. So, a manager wants to have a look into the cost of land and facilities, the state of the local economy. Is it increasing? Is it decreasing? The stability of the currency and the extent of regional integration and free trade. If the country is actively involved in free trade and regional integration, that is good news for the company. We have talked about risk in international business. So this is where legal and regulatory factors come into the picture. The firm wants to have a look into the regulations of FDI and technology transfer, meaning that is it easy to transfer technology to the local market? Do they need a lot of learning? So this is something that should be considered. Next, they want to have a look into the nature of legal system and laws. And we have learned about this the last few weeks, intellectual property protection. Because you are operating in a foreign country, you are exposing company secrets in a foreign country. And companies and managers will have a look into the extent of tariffs and other trade barriers. Next is political and governmental factors. Remember country risk that we have learned a few weeks back. A company wants to have a look into the political stability of that host country, the host country's openness to foreign investment, the extent of bureaucracy and red tape, and also transparency and the rate of corruption in that host country, because all of this will incur unnecessary costs for the company. Let's take a look into the nature of FDI. FDI is the most advanced, expensive, complex, and the most risky entry strategy. Remember this? It's here. It involves the establishment of manufacturing plants, marketing subsidiaries, or other facilities abroad. FDI is undertaken by firms from both the advanced economy and also emerging markets. We have firms, especially in emerging markets like Malaysia, India and China, they are also engaging in foreign direct investment. Target countries, on the other hand, can be both advanced economies and emerging markets. Remember the statistics that we have looked into just now? So both advanced economies and emerging markets are also target countries for FDI. Now this is interesting. FDI will occasionally raise patriotic sentiments among citizens. For example, Haier from China and Maytag in US. These are the items produced by Maytag, and Haier is doing a similar thing. So it makes sense if Haier wants to do FDI in US through foreign direct investment buying Maytag. But it didn't happen. Why? Because of this. Here didn't take time to win the hearts of workers, shareholders and the US public. So in 2005, most Chinese companies are ill-prepared for this. So this purchase didn't happen. A similar thing happened with Geely from China and Proton in Malaysia. Geely purchased a few ownership of Proton in Malaysia and it raised a patriotic sentiments among Malaysians. But the partnership and the FDI happened to be a good decision because Proton is doing well at the moment. What are the key features of foreign direct investment? The key characteristic, first, it represents a substantial resource commitment. Capital investment should be high. And it implies local presence and operations. That makes sense because you are building an operation there, you are building a facility there. And remember, we have talked about comparative advantages of a nation. Firms will invest in countries that provide specific comparative advantages. It can be labor costs, it can be natural resources, even the location itself. FDI also entails substantial risk and uncertainty. And direct investors will deal more intensively with specific social and cultural variables in the host market. Because you are having a local presence in that host country. I give you the example of Tata in Malaysia. Tata is a conglomerate from India, so they do exporting, but their main operation is car manufacturing, vehicle manufacturing, and also IT services. But in Malaysia, they do not do FDI for their car manufacturing and vehicle manufacturing. They do FDI for their IT services. And for vehicle, they only export their vehicle. So remember, for your assignment, different country and different combination of country and company will produce a specific entry strategy method. There are 3 motives to enter a foreign country using foreign direct investment. So this is unique for foreign direct investment because companies that choose foreign direct investment can enter a foreign market for its market, or for its resource, or for its efficiency. If they enter a foreign market for the market, the company wants to gain access to new markets or new opportunities. They also want to follow key customers and they want to compete with key rivals in their own markets. If a company uses FDI to enter a foreign market, it can be because of resource or asset-seeking motives. They want to access raw materials, they want to access knowledge or other assets. Remember Silicon Valley in the US, and a lot of companies they wanted to enter US because they want to place their companies in Silicon Valley. They want to gain access. They may want to gain access to the technology and also managerial know-how available in a key market. So here, resource can be tangible or intangible. A company may also enter a foreign country through foreign direct investment for its efficiency. Some countries, they have very low labor costs. They also have very low cost for materials. So, they enter foreign direct investment to reduce sourcing and production costs, to locate production near customers and take advantage of government incentives. They may also want to avoid trade barriers. For some companies and for some countries, Some countries, they offer 3 of this. China, for example, they offer market-seeking motives for companies, resources, and also efficiencies. So it depends on the country also. We look at this one by one. For market-seeking motive, firms may want to gain access to new markets or opportunities. The existence of a large market motivates many firms to produce goods at or near customer locations. Take a look into countries like India and China. With such high population, this is actually a good market for consumer products. Companies like Boeing, Coca-Cola, IBM, and so on, all of them generate more sales abroad than they do at home. Firms may also use FDI for market-seeking motive to follow key customers. Firms, they follow key customers abroad to preempt or prevent other vendors from servicing them. So this is more applicable towards the B2B market. For example, Tradegard Industries, they supply the plastic that its customer Procter & Gamble use. Procter & Gamble, as you all know, it's a consumer product company. So they use plastic from Tradegard to make disposable diapers. When P&G built a plant in China, Tradegard also follow and establish a production there as well. Firms may also do market-seeking motive by competing with key rivals in their own markets. This is for competitive reasons. And then they do not want to lose out in terms of market share. So this goes back to market-seeking motive. So they want to compete with key rivals in their own markets. Some multinational companies, they choose to compete with competitors directly in their home markets. Why? To weaken and force the rival to expand or spend their resources defending their own market. For example, Caterpillar and Komatsu. Both of these are competitors in the tractor industry. So Caterpillar, if I'm not mistaken, from US, they enter Japan to venture out to compete with their arch rival Komatsu. Why? To hamper Komatsu's ability to expand its activities in the US. So it's quite competitive. Next is resource seeking or asset seeking motive. Firms may want to access raw materials needed in extractive and agricultural industries. Firms in the mining and oil industry especially, they must go where the materials are located. So you can see this in the oil and gas industry and also in the commodity industry, palm oil and so on. Right? They want also to gain access to knowledge or other assets. When Whirlpool from US entered Europe, they partnered with Philips. Why? They want to access a well-known brand and also distribution network because Philips is quite stable in Europe. For resource or asset seeking motive, firms may want to access technological and managerial know-how available in a key market. We talked about Silicon Valley just now. Another example is Japan. The firm may benefit by establishing presence in a key industrial cluster. So they can learn from that cluster, such as the robotics industry in Japan, chemicals in Germany, fashion in Italy, and software in the US. So this goes back to a country's comparative advantage. They also seek for efficiency. So companies, they want to reduce sourcing and production costs by accessing inexpensive labor and other cheap inputs to the production process. So this will explain the massive development of manufacturing facilities in China, Mexico, Eastern European countries, and India. For efficiency, they also want to locate production near customers. In the fashion industry, for example, labels like Zara and Sweden, they locate a lot of their garment production in key markets. See Spain and Turkey. So, for example, if you can see here, the journey of a single Zara dress, they all go back to Europe because the key market is in Europe. They also want to take advantage of government incentives. In addition to restricting imports, governments may also offer subsidies and tax concession. Why? It's so much better to the host country than exporting. So governments will always encourage foreign direct investment through a lot of incentives. Companies also want to avoid trade barriers. By establishing a physical presence in a country, the investor will obtain the same advantages as local firms. So this explains why Japanese automakers, they set up factories in the US, because trade barrier in the US for vehicle especially is quite high. So FDI also increase economies of scale. How? First is falling fixed costs. Many industries and productive tasks have high per unit fixed costs. So this will decline the more the task is performed. And because FDI is focused towards production, FDI will help concentrate production or results in high sales volumes. They also increase economies of scale by managerial resource efficiencies. Highly international firms employ a relatively fixed number of headquarters staff across more subsidiaries and affiliates. So they manage all of the countries involved. Next is through specialization of labor. So FDI facilitates hiring more specialized workers. This will increase efficiencies. Have a look into the efficiency seeking motive and also market or resource seeking motive. So in terms of resource, some countries are quite cheap in terms of their raw materials. So this is supported by specialization of labor. Next is financial economies. Large firms with extensive international operations can usually access capital at lower cost. We continue on with types of foreign direct investment. So in your exams, there may be questions on the types of FDI or how can you differentiate FDI. So first you can differentiate FDI according to how fresh you want to start the venture. So is it starting new or you partner with another firm? If you start new, you are doing greenfield. Why is the name greenfield? So you imagine a field, it's green and a lot of things can be done there and it's fresh and you can do a lot of things there. But because it's fresh and because it's so new, you will need a very high capital. Meaning you will need a very high resource commitment. So in greenfield FDI, the firm invests to build. They are building a new manufacturing, marketing or administrative facility, as opposed to acquiring existing facilities. If the firm acquires existing facility, they are doing merger and acquisition. So let's take a look into greenfield first. Sony in Malaysia, for example, their FDI in Malaysia is through greenfield investment. So they acquire land, they build a factory. In fact, they build many factories, they build many offices in the host country, Malaysia. So what they did was greenfield FDI. This is different than M&A or merger and acquisition. Merger is a special type of acquisition where two firms join to form a new larger company. Acquisition is when there's a direct investment or purchase of an existing company or facility. So for the case of Tesco in Malaysia, they venture into Malaysia, they enter Malaysia by acquiring existing company. Here, they acquire the facilities left by Makro, which is previously a supermarket chain itself in Malaysia. So here, there's still resource commitment, but Tesco do not have to spend so much time building a factory or building a facility because they can just buy it from a previous would-be competitor. FDI can also be differentiated by the nature of ownership. So it can be wholly owned or it can be an equity joint venture. An equity participation is an acquisition of partial ownership in an existing firm. So maybe buying or acquiring ownership. Okay. Wholly direct investment is when the investor fully owns the foreign assets. And equity joint venture is partnership in which a separate firm is created through the investment of assets by two or more parent firms that gain joint ownership of a new legal entity. So it can be equity participation, wholly owned direct investment, or equity joint ventures. 3. It can be deferred according to level of integration. Level of integration can be either vertical. Vertical meaning there are multiple stages of a value chain. Is it upstream or downstream? It can also be horizontal. Is it single stage of its value chain? So let's say the firm engaged in a vertical value chain in a host country. Let's say Shell engages in a vertical value chain FDI in Malaysia. They are doing vertical value chain FDI, meaning that from input to output, everything is being done in Malaysia. Okay, let's say another competitor, maybe it's Petronas. They are engaging in a foreign direct investment in Ghana. Okay, but they are only engaging in a single stage of its value chain, which is horizontal FDI. So there's operation in Malaysia and also operation in Ghana. So it's horizontal. So again, FDI will differ according to if you are starting new or if you partner with another firm. Second, nature of ownership, and third, level of integration. This is quite important, how FDI influences ethics. FDI offers numerous benefits to the recipient countries, to the host countries. What are the benefits? They offer, especially to the citizens, because of the labour market, they offer jobs. If they offer jobs, the socio-economic status of the country can increase. They also offer a variety of products. They also will improve a nation's economic status. However, FDI side effects can harm the natural environment, especially in countries with weak environmental laws. Imagine during the time when a lot of oil and gas firms, they venture into Asian countries. Imagine what are the resources that they are taking from Asian countries, yeah, and also imagine the manufacturing industry in China. If there are so many manufacturing facilities there, if there are so many manufacturing activities there, what do you think about the environmental implications there? What are the toxic emissions that are going to be produced by those activities? So, pollution and ecological destruction may emerge alongside rapid economic growth. So, we do get this, but we do get this as well if they are not being managed carefully. So, multinational companies must behave responsibly in their international dealings. And host country governments must not allow development goals to compromise citizen well-being. FDI will always look good on the host country, and especially will look good on the host country's government because the numbers look good. But this is one of the main implications, one of the biggest negative implications. Our next topic is international collaborative venture. It is a partnership between two or more firms which include equity joint venture and non-equity project-based venture. One will include a sense of ownership. One is more towards project-based. So, sometimes it is called partnerships or strategic alliances. Why do firms collaborate? They help overcome the substantial risk and high cost of international business. Remember the risk that we have talked about earlier in the subject? This is one of the ways how firms can mitigate those risks. It also makes possible the achievement of projects that exceed the capabilities of the individual firm. Sony Ericsson is one of the examples of international collaborative venture by combining their expertise, and this is actually an international and cross-border collaborative venture because Sony is from Japan and Ericsson is from Europe. Two types of collaborative venture. First is equity joint venture. This is normally formed when no one party has all the assets needed to exploit an opportunity. And the local partner will contribute a factory, market know-how, connections or low-cost labor, and the other partner will focus on technological expertise. For example, we have BMW and Shenyang for BMW Brilliance Automotive Limited. So this is BMW's internationalization to China. Next is a project-based joint venture. It has a much narrower scope and with a limited timetable, and no legal entity is created, again because they are project-based. So, partners collaborate on joint development of new technologies, products, and they also share expertise with each other. So, this cooperation will help them catch up with rivals in the technology department. So, firms here will combine staff, resources, and capabilities. For example, toll roads, they are an example of project-based venture. Let's take a look into other types of international collaborative ventures. First is consortium. It is project-based and it is usually a non-equity venture with multiple partners. These partners, they fulfill a large-scale project. For example, you can see consortium-based non-equity venture in commercial aircraft manufacturing. For example, Boeing and Airbus. Next is cross-licensing agreement. This is a type of a project-based non-equity venture. Partners agree to access licensed technology developed by the other on preferential terms. This is more common in the telecommunications industry. especially to invent new technologies. You can see this in the agreement between Samsung and Google, and also Samsung, Google and this company. So this cross-licensing will produce various licenses on patent. Samsung can access this company's patent, this company can access Google's patent, and Google can access Samsung's patent for certain number of years. For retailers, this is a special case of internationalization because their FDI is quite unique. Retailers typically internationalize through FDI and collaborative ventures. They also take various forms. You can see this in the form of department stores or specialty retailers, supermarkets, convenience stores or big box stores. For instance, you can see IKEA, Toys R Us, and especially a good example for retailers internationalization is Walmart. We do not have Walmart in Malaysia, but there are more than 400 stores in China, maybe even more now, and sourcing almost all of their merchandise locally and providing thousands of local jobs. They are unique because they are operating within the society of that host country. So they will experience culture and language barriers. For example, you can see in terms of different product and service portfolio, store hours, store layout, relations between management and labor. Retail stores such as Carrefour, you can also see maybe Tesco once upon a time. Tesco in UK, Tesco in Malaysia, totally different. In Malaysia, you can see there's a special section for pork or alcohol, and it's more closed. But in the UK, the original host country is more open. Second, consumers tend to develop strong loyalty to indigenous retailers. What do they mean by indigenous retailers? Retailers from their home country. But this depends on the level of nationalism of that country. This explains why some internationalization of retailers fail. Next is legal and regulatory barriers. Different countries have different laws that affect retailing, unique laws. For example, Germany, they limit store hours. They also require recycling. 4. And retailers must often develop local sources of supply. This is understandable because the host country's government want to protect the local industry. So we go back to the risk of international business, country risk. Tesco in Malaysia especially, this is one of the best examples for this. The Malaysian government requires Tesco to source from local producers. How do retailers can be successful in a host country? First is through advanced research and planning. French retailer Carrefour, for example, they spent 12 years building their business in Taiwan because they want to understand the Chinese culture. They also can establish logistics and purchasing networks in each market. So this requires a lot of planning because well-organized sourcing and logistics will ensure inventory is always maintained. 3. Retailers can assume entrepreneurial and creative approach. So we never see Virgin, the store in Malaysia, but Virgin Megastore has expanded to Asia, Europe and North America using creative approaches. And adjust the business model to suit local conditions. Remember, different countries have different needs, and retailers because they are operating within the society of the host country, this is something that they need to do to be successful. For example, in Mexico, Home Depot packages their merchandise to suit smaller budget. Home Depot is from US, of course the purchasing power is higher than Mexico. So in general, Mexico's budget is much smaller. They also offer flexible payment plans. We have come to the end of our topic. We discussed licensing and franchising in earlier class, but for this class, we discussed FDI and collaborative ventures. We have discussed the characteristics of foreign direct investment. We also have discussed the motive for FDI. Remember, we have 3 motives: market seeking, resource seeking, and also efficiency seeking. We also have discussed the types of foreign direct investment. It will differ according to ownership. It will also differ according to if the firm wants to start new or if they want to collaborate. Also, it differs according to level of integration. We also have discussed international collaborative ventures and the experiences of retailers in foreign markets. I hope this class has been helpful. If you need to know more and if you have any other questions, please drop any comment in the comment section. I will answer them as soon as possible.